Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Chris Lee. This is National Signing Day. Our guest today will be Vandy Sports recruiting editor Sean Williams, and as always on Wednesday, Seabass from WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee joins us. This episode sponsored by the Well Coffee House. The Well turns coffee into water, and it has a mission to bring clean water to the world. To date, over 30 communities have access to safe water, health, and hope. You can make an impact by visiting a Well Coffee House today. There are 4 locations to serve you in the Nashville area: Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. More information can be found at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We thank our co-sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. That is located in the Gulch. Our news presented by Sutherland and Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who have been in accidents. If you or someone you know has been in a wreck or another accident, reach out to Sutherland and Belk, see what your rights are. You can find their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. National Signing Day is here. The Commodores class highlighted by the signing of 3 quarterbacks. We will get to those a little bit in the podcast, and we will also break down a lot of the rest of Vanderbilt's signing class. The guest line presented by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen at Boll & Branch. I've slept on Boll & Branch sheets for years and did not know what I was missing. They are fair trade certified, so they're made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but you won't want to. Once you have the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted Best Mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. It is the Wednesday podcast. Joining us, as always, on Wednesday, our buddy Seabass. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. Now, can I narrate the situation, man? Can I describe the scene?
You may.
All right. So I'm in between shifts at the radio station. I just got home, got my new refrigerator delivered. I'm kicking back in the recliner. Both of the pups are chilling on their beds. I got the MLB network on with the mute button, but the caption's on so I can read it. And I'm sitting here doing this podcast with you. How do you think life is right now?
Life is okay. Life's a little better. We have a special guest today, Sean Williams, our recruiting editor, who's had a busy day. He's been doing double duty for us and the Missouri site, where he's also, I guess, Sean, you were the recruiting editor there. I don't know what title Gabe has handed you, but
yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, well, maybe I just promoted you. Let's
happy to be on the podcast, Chris. It's actually National Signing Day, so yeah, I'm ecstatic to be on the site and talk about all these kids I've been keeping up with throughout the year. So
that is true. You've followed these kids, some of them for at least a year.
Yeah, at least, and some over a year.
Well, so where do you start? I'll start it with you, Sean. The Jordan Butler decommitment, what's it been, a week or two ago, kind of got this headed on a trajectory where we thought it was headed in a different spot, kind of like the football season, but they closed strong. I'm surprised that they were able to do as much as they did. I think they ended up with a good recruiting haul at quarterback. They have 3 new ones now. Just days ago, it was 1. Still waiting on some other situations. We can get into those later. But let's start with the quarterbacks. And, Sean, I want you to just talk about what they got with those 3 kids in this class, and then we'll kick that to Seabass.
Yeah, like you said, Chris, so, a pretty strong finish, just overall. Like you said, just going back to the Butler decommitment, everybody's kind of on eggshells after that. But, they did a really nice job of finishing strong. But the 3 quarterbacks, you've got, obviously, Ken Seals, who's been in the mix for, a very long time. He brings, just kind of he's got a really good arm. He's accurate, obviously. I think he was like 76% pass completion this past year. Can make plays with his legs. I think he had over 600 yards rushing. So he brings a nice little dynamic. Mid-year enrollee guy, too, so he's going to be a guy that's going to come in the spring. So will the Jeremy Musa kid, the JUCO kid from California. He's going to be an early enrollee, too. So those 2 guys would be in mid-year. And, with Musa, you've got just a guy with a big arm that can make all the throws, it seems like. He had obviously he went to Hawaii out of high school, and he's got some college seasoning. Being at Hawaii, he kind of, coming in mid-year, he's going to know how things kind of operate on the college level. He's going to bring you some experience playing in college on the JUCO level, but obviously he's still got some experience at the college level playing other college level guys. So, but yeah, he was highly productive, threw for over 3,000 yards and 37 touchdowns. So, and he's got a really impressive arm strength, and we'll see what happens there. And you got Mike Wright. This is a kid that really has been interested in Vanderbilt for over a year now. I mean, he's visited 3 times. I talked to him. The last time I talked to him was, I think, the late spring of 2018. He came in for a visit, and that might have been the last visit he took. He might have took another visit during the summer. But yeah, I mean, he's always loved Vanderbilt. I remember talking to him. He's a really mature kid, just like Ken Seals is. Ken Seals is he's a really mature kid when you talk to him. Mike's the same way. You could tell he was really interested in Vanderbilt back then, just in terms of the academics and everything, and loves the area as well. So the thing with Mike, he's about like Ken Seals. I think he was about a 65% passer this past year, but he counted for 50 touchdowns. Here's the thing with Mike that, kind of has his element. He's got a strong arm too, but he can make plays with his legs, but he's obviously going to kick it into another gear, that's going to be a little bit higher than Seals, where Seals can make plays with his legs and get first downs. Mike Wright can make plays with his legs and get touchdowns because he's that kind of a dynamic athlete and he's that fast. So definitely a dynamic that Vanderbilt needs in terms of dual threat capabilities, that's for sure.
Seabass, your turn.
Let's start with Jeremy Musa. He's new to me, so I don't really know a whole lot about Jeremy, but from what I've seen and what I've heard people talking about, they feel good about that and the ability to bring a guy that versatile in at the last minute. Let's go to the other two. First with Mike Wright. Fellas, sometimes doesn't it seem like there's a compromise one way or the other when you have a quarterback that is an athlete. He's great when the pocket breaks down, but what about when it doesn't and you need to stand tall and then make the throw and they can't do it? This is not the case with him. He can throw with touch. He's got zip on it. As you mentioned, he's a very smart quarterback, but one thing that I love is his willingness to hit when it's time to take off. He does, not before then. He allows the play to run its course, and it says, okay, now there's nothing. I looked at all my check downs. It's not there. Went through progressions. It's time to go. And when he goes, man, I know you turn that film on and you see him hit the seam, and you got guys on both sides with angles on him, and he still splits the season and gets to the house. And he's, I believe he's Sean. He's a Woodward Academy cat, right?
Yeah.
So he's playing pretty darn decent competition right there. I really like the late get of Mike Wright. And then, with Ken Seals, man, as you know, Chris, I'm just a big old fat fan of Ken Seals, man. We've had quarterbacks in the last couple of classes, and some have had a whole lot of talent, but they just played quarterback. They weren't quarterback. They didn't live quarterback. As Sean was saying, dude, Ken Seals lives quarterback. That is what he is. If I put him out there on the field with you and the other teammates out there, and I didn't tell you which number he was, you'd know who he was. You would know that's a dude that was born to play quarterback, and you're never going to have to worry about attitude or approach or, his commitment to the game. He's a very accurate quarterback, and while he's not the type of, he's plenty mobile. That is not just a pocket quarterback by any stretch, and there's ample film to prove that. But what I'd say is this: he's a different type of versatile from Mike Wright. Mike Wright can hit that seam, and there's nobody going to catch him like that. Ken Seals is more than capable of extending plays, generally does. But another thing that he don't mind doing is lower that shoulder and run you over. And Ken's a big kid. He really, look, the Weatherford Kangaroos hadn't made the playoffs in 12 years, something like that. And to do that in the district and the regions that he's playing in is not an easy thing to do. Ken Seals is a big part of that, and I am as excited to have him in this class as any quarterback prospect that I can remember. And I would say Jake Cutler, but I mean, we weren't that excited when he signed. I'm as excited to sign this guy as any quarterback that I can remember since I've been following recruiting since '97.
They played 6A football, which I think is the highest class in Texas, correct?
It is.
Although they're not one of the bigger schools by any stretch.
Yeah, no, 6A is as high as it goes.
Right, but I mean, Weatherford is not, like for Texas high schools, it's not a huge high school like among 6A, correct?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, not even close.
Well, let me ask you, when I watch him, I don't think he's a burner, but I think he's got enough speed to when he escapes the pocket can maybe get to a first down mark. His 40 time is about what Shermer's was, I think. At least what's listed. My concern with him, and I don't think it's a game ender for him by any stretch, because you've seen quarterbacks, Danny Werfel is one who comes to mind, that if they're accurate and they know where to get the ball, and he does seem to have that sense about him on film, that he throws to a spot and he knows where it's going, the receiver knows where it's going. But I did not see, a fastball throwing arm, I guess is a way to put it. Is that fair?
I mean, is it fair? Maybe, but I mean, it also depends on game situation. I mean, how many did we see him need to make the big throw and not be able to do it, or just get through that? He flashes enough arm. He's got enough arm to get the job done. I don't think there's any question about that. And from a mobility standpoint, and you may have been just talking speed, but from a mobility standpoint, Ken Seals and Kyle Shermer are nowhere close. Not at all. Ken Seals is much more mobile than that. I think what did Kyle Shermer run in his combine? Was it 4.9?
He ran a 4.9, and that's what Seals lists on his huddle. That's why I made that comparison.
Yeah, but he's got much more fluidity to him than Kyle did. I'm not saying he could be a better quarterback than Kyle. That would be great if he can, but I don't liken them to each other in that way.
Yeah, and I think he may have listed a 4.8 something technically, so it's in the ballpark. But Sean, I want to ask you about the Musa kid. That was a late one on the radar. Put up some pretty good numbers, I think, in 6 games. A couple things that stood out to me. I thought he was really poised in the pocket. And this is not a fair comparison necessarily because he's older and he's had the benefit of a college weight room and those things. But I thought he had the strongest arm of the 3. And I thought he was able to really throw on the run a little bit and also throw across his body and make some tougher throws in what little I could see of him online.
Yeah, that's in talking to him after he visited, I kind of asked him what the coaches like about him. And he pretty much said that, just his ability to make all the throws that you need to make on the football field, just having that arm strength to be able to do that and the accuracy as well. So, but yeah, like I said, I mean, it's very intriguing. I mean, he had, I think, an offer from New Mexico State. I know he took an official visit there before he went to Vanderbilt. And he told me that Oklahoma and UCLA was kind of showing him a little bit of interest as well. So, yeah, it's definitely some intrigue there. I mean, he's a kid that's got a year of college experience at Hawaii. And, he played this past year at JUCO. I think he played 9 games, actually, this past season. So, yeah, it's kind of intriguing. He'll be in early, get to learn the playbook and everything like that. Kind of intriguing to see where this goes. I mean, I think it's a very good pickup for Vanderbilt. I mean, because obviously when you get 3 quarterbacks, 2 of them are high school kids. You got one of them that's, a JUCO kid that does have some college experience. Does that give him a complete, does that give him how big of an upper hand does that give him? We'll wait and see. But I mean, I think to have somebody with experience will definitely help in that aspect because it seems like the quarterback roster is going to be a little bit razor thin going into the season aside from these 3 guys. So we'll see how big of an impact he has.
I want to talk about some other guys, but just a final thought on the quarterbacks. Sean, it's interesting that 2 of the 3 will be coming to enroll early. Mike Wright will not get that chance. So I wonder if that will not give him, well, it has to give him somewhat of a disadvantage going into fall camp. And I mean, look, their starter's going to be one of those three guys next year, if not a mix of those three.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give the upper hand to whoever's coming in early. I mean, and that question, I guess, I'll pose to both of you guys is who do you think? Let's just go ahead and place bets. Who's going to be the starter next year?
Seabass, I'll let you go first.
Well, what I wish is that they were all three coming in at the same time. You know what I mean? Time frame, so they can start on at the exact same time. I mean, I just for me, it's Ken Seals. I haven't seen Musa, so I can't really speak to that. I mean, I agree with you about the experience. That's that's certainly helpful. But fellas, haven't we seen in the past couple of years, and even on the major college level, I ain't talking about some FCS stuff. I'm talking about major Power 5 football, the ability for freshmen to come in, and I know it's a dangerous place to live. I get that. But freshmen being able to come in, and maybe because of the way that some of the offenses has adapted down to the high school level, that makes them much more conducive for that transition to be smoother. But they're playing earlier now, having success. So, I mean, at one point in time, the thought of playing a freshman quarterback was utter doom and guaranteed chaos that year. But I don't know if that's the case anymore. And you're basically returning your whole line. You get some good-looking young skill position players. I know you lose the big three. I get all that, but technically we only really had one of them, maybe one and a quarter, if you will, for that season, for a billion different reasons. But I am especially one that's going to come in the spring, and have the advantage of that. So I'm not nearly as concerned as I would have been maybe 7-8 years ago at the thought of a true freshman coming in and leading this team next year.
Well, my thought, I think I like Wright the best of the three, the whole package, including the age, because you got to factor that in, because kids can do things, say, at 20. I don't know how old Musa is, 19 to 20. You gain arm strength and athleticism as you get a little bit older. So I think what I've watched, and keep in mind, this is highlight film, so we see the best of what they are. I think I like Wright the best, sure. But I have to think, and Sean, I'll see if you agree with me, I would give the edge to Musa, knowing nothing else, just because of that advanced age and maturity, and I just think that he's got a better arm, probably the best arm of the three, and I think that's a big thing. And also having played college ball, albeit JUCO, but he's had a little bit more experience. Knowing just what I know and just what I've seen on film, which again is a very limited slice of what those guys do, that's my pick, but it's a very premature pick. And as I've said a million times, it's really hard to make judgments on kids so you get them all out there on the same field in a college environment, because some kids rise to the challenge more than you thought, and some kids that you thought were up to it don't get there at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm kind of like you, Chris. I mean, if I was to go ahead and throw an early bet in, I'd probably go with Musa just because of that college experience. But I agree with Seabass, too. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility and insanity to throw Ken Seals in there, because you look at the offense he ran in high school, it's pretty wide open spread. So, I mean, I think you'd be able to adjust pretty quickly, but so that's not out of the realm of possibility. But I'd probably just early on, I'd just go with Musa just because of that experience. But, hey, we'll see what happens, and we'll see who's right and who's wrong.
Well, and the between the years part that Seabass has talked about and alluded to is really important. So that's the intangible. And I'm not trying to say Seals wasn't good. That's not it at all. He threw for nearly 5,000 yards. I just see a question or two with physical attributes that I didn't see on film. And again, those aren't things that kill your career, but they're just things that I want to see how he answers once he gets there. I do want to touch on something else that Derek Mason said at his press conference today. By the way, that was a neat event. I was one of the few that got to go. The media got invited in late. We got to interview him. I thought the setting and the backdrop for Derek's interview, although it was not the best for audio, made for good camera stuff. And I know that people knocked that decision to have a private event downtown, but if you're in the room, it was actually pretty cool. It was on Broadway and 4th at the corner there, and I thought it played well to the cameras. But He did say today that they had changed the offense. I pressed in on him a little bit on that. He said that's a topic for another time. So I don't know what this means with new offense, but I'm anxious to hear y'all's thoughts on this, starting with Sean.
Yeah, I'm kind of anxious to see it too, just because I talked to Ken Seals after his official, and he mentioned that too, and I tried to kind of probe him a little bit, but he was kind of more vague about it. But he did mention the new offense. I think in Chad's Simmons article with Mike Wright, I think he mentioned the new offense or something to that degree as well. When talking about his committing to Vanderbilt and signing with them, so. Kind of intrigued to see which direction they go. But yeah, we're hearing inklings about it. Obviously you said Derek Mason kind of mentioned it today. I've heard it from, I've heard it from Ken Seals. We've heard it from Mike Wright. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what takes place.
Well, Seabass, I want to ask you, we heard quote unquote new offense this time last year, and we saw what that turned into. I'm genuinely curious as to what this is going to mean, or if it's just the same old repackaging of what, yes, coach speak is a good way to put it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because, what do you generally try to, you always want to bring in the best possible players, but you also are trying to bring in players to fit the type of scheme that you want to run. So my question is, with this new offense, whatever it is, I don't know what it is. So whatever it is it something that fits with the personnel that you've recruited for this roster outside of the 2020 class? You know what I mean? And it's hard to answer that because we don't know what it is. But whatever it is, it seemed favorable enough to guys like Ken Seals and especially a guy like Mike Wright, who made the decision to flip towards whatever that offensive scheme is. So don't know what it is, but it sounds at least like the young cats are buying into it.
It's top secret, Seabass.
Yeah, I guess it'll be top secret again this spring. I didn't ask about access, but I would be surprised if they loosen that up a little bit. But especially
really
if they are,
it's
all.
He said that's a subject for another matter.
Right. And he did mention when I asked him with the follow up, I think he did say that some of this was based on the kids they're bringing in. So if that's true, that is some attempt to meld schemes to personnel. But I want to hit a couple more guys before we go into the mailbag, and I'll just start with you, Sean. Give me a couple of kids that you feel are worth highlighting out of this class, and let's discuss those for a moment.
Early on, I know who Seabass is going to mention.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I'll mention Bradley Ashmore, just because obviously he was the first guy to kickstart the class, but he's obviously a big offensive tackle. Just talking to the offensive line guru, Justin Angel, I know he is very impressed with Ashmore's abilities to not only run block, but pass block as well. So yeah, he would be one I would highlight. And I'd probably go with Rocco Griffin too. Seems like a guy that can come in. I know he had like a shade under 1,000 yards rushing. He didn't touch the ball a whole lot, He's kind of more one of those guys. He rushed for about, I think, 900 yards, but seems pretty explosive, and he's also a good returner too in punts and kickoffs. I think he had a few touchdowns in the return game too. So he's somebody that can maybe make an impact on special teams when he comes in, but kind of be a little bit more of a dynamic running back that can maybe, catch some balls out of the backfield, get you some rushing yards, and just kind of be a little dynamic running back that can be a little versatile out of the backfield.
Seabass, your turn.
Yeah, you know what? You want to know something really interesting about this class right now? Do you know that Chase Lloyd, listed at 6'2", is the third shortest player in this class? Yeah, I'm looking at, you got a 5'11", and then it goes 5'10", 5'11", and then it goes straight up to 6'2" and up. You're right. We know he likes length. He likes height. There's no question about that. But to me, this seems to be a particularly tall class. But yeah, there's a couple of players that I'd like to look at. One of the guys that's just really intriguing to me, and the numbers don't jump off the table and as far as production, but I'm guessing, Sean, this is probably more of a high school scheme than anything else. But, at least from a film standpoint, I think one of the most intriguing guys in this class is Diego LaMonica. Now, of course, look, the tight end position for us, the talents come in. Will we use it? Won't we use it? When we use it, it's awesome. When we don't, it's super frustrating. But Diego LaMonica, I don't know about you, but that guy is one of the more intriguing players in this entire class for me.
Yeah, he can really go up and get it.
Physical too, so hopefully, that, like you said, Seabass, whether they use him or not, at least they can use him in the run game as a blocker, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It's just he looked like a guy to me, like Chris, you were talking about going up and getting it. I'm just surprised they didn't give that an opportunity to do that a little bit more. The offensive line class to me is very interesting. You mentioned Bradley Ashmore, which I love. I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was the first person in this class.
Correct.
Yeah, was.
But some of the others in there are interesting. We've had last time we went out and got a big versatile offensive lineman from Virginia, it worked out, didn't it?
Justin School, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if this is just school or not. I'm pretty stoked about Ben Cox. Jason Brooks comes from my home, right next to my hometown. Played at Dobie, and he's an interesting dude. And I like what Coach Mason had to say. He said, he's an interior guy with some tackle measurables. But he's great out in space, man, and he has a motor. He finishes plays. I like him a lot. I'm also intrigued by Kevo Wesley. Kevo Wesley is under 270 pounds, considered one of the top offensive linemen in the entire state of Illinois. And I'm wondering, fellas, Chris, Sean, is this a guy that they try to put to 25, 30 pounds on and make a center out of this guy? I wonder what the plans are for Kevo Wesley, because I love him as a player.
I'm not sure. Just talking to him. I know I talked to him after he committed, and I think I talked to him before whenever he took an unofficial visit. But I know they said they just like him as a versatile offensive lineman, somebody that can just really line up and play, every position on the offensive line. So, I mean, what you mentioned in terms of playing center and things like that, that's definitely a possibility, it seems like, with him. And the thing about Wesley, too, is he's a relative newcomer to football. I think he's only been playing the last 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, he's still got a lot to learn. You could probably say he's still relatively raw and playing the game. So, I mean, he's probably can polish up his fundamentals a whole lot in college and become a lot better player. So his ceiling's pretty high.
Well, I think we all pretty much know we got a stud in DeRicky Wright. But the other guy that I wanted to mention real quick, if I didn't, I couldn't even talk about this class without mentioning Logan Kyle. I'm a big fan. I think he's a polished wide receiver. There's not a lot that I think they can always improve coming in from one level to the next. But I don't think there's a whole ton you're going to have to teach him in regards to what you normally would have to do with a true freshman wide receiver coming. I think he walks in from day one playing.
Derek Mason, if I heard him correctly, made an interesting comment on him, because I thought he was going to be that safety outside linebacker combo guy, kind of like Warren Burks was for a year. He's very, very big for safety, unusually large. He's in the neighborhood of 6'4", 220, I think. But Derek Mason alluded to maybe using him on offense. I think he maybe said tight end. That was news to me. Has that been something that has come up when you've talked to him or talked to analysts about him?
No, not actually. But I mean, I could see that. I mean, I know just in their video today, Mason did kind of talk about just putting him in different spots on offense and defense. Because he makes plays on both sides of the ball for his team. So, and I mean, I could see that maybe being a two-way kind of guy. I mean, I think obviously projection-wise, I think he's going to play a lot more defense than offense. But I could see, Mason maybe throwing him in on some offensive plays, playing some tight end from time to time, getting a few snaps a game. I mean, he's kind of that dynamic of an athlete. And Mason was kind of harped on that. He's just an athlete that can play a lot of different positions on the football field. But I think in college you're going to see more on defense, maybe throw him in on some offensive snaps, play tight end a little bit, something like that. I could see that definitely.
Sean, I want to ask you about DJ Lundy before we go to the mailbag. Chad Simmons, I believe, reported today that he is going to announce his decision tomorrow. It's between Georgia, Virginia Tech, And Vanderbilt, my thought with the timing of the announcement is that's really favorable to Vanderbilt because it sounded like Georgia was slow playing him. So unless Georgia materializes with an offer, is it fair to maybe call Vanderbilt the favorite from afar? And if they get him, what are they getting there?
Well, Chris, you obviously haven't been checking out vandysports.com because Georgia did offer him last night.
I guess a better way to put it, is that a legitimate, like, for right now offer?
I think that would be honestly when I see something like that and you offer a guy like Lundy on a Tuesday night before signing day, I think that's more of a, hey, we got you an offer. We want you to come in and visit though before we accept a commitment type of deal, type of thing. So if he's making a decision tomorrow, he never has taken an official to Virginia Tech. I know that was kind of in the works for this past weekend, but obviously he was playing in the state championship game on Saturday, so that never really materialized. So I mean. Right now, he took an official visit to Vanderbilt 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's looking pretty good for Vanderbilt right now. And the thing about Lundy, he's another dynamic guy that colleges like on both sides of the ball. Like I think Georgia liked him at, maybe linebacker or running back or just kind of an athlete. I know Virginia Tech was recruiting him mainly as a linebacker. Vanderbilt likes him as a running back. So, they've done a good job. They've recruited him for a long time. So I think that's going to kind of pay dividends in terms of that long-term relationship with the coaching staff. I'd say Vanderbilt's probably got the edge on that one.
Let's go to the mailbag.
That would be before you go to the mailbag, Chris. I would love for that to be the case because, not literally, but on a football field, guys, DJ Lundy's a bully. He's he's like
it's 230. It's like 235, man. It's hard to bring down.
I mean, it's like watching the Bulls run the streets of Pamplona, man. I mean, that guy is unbelievable. When he's on the defensive side of the ball, he's crushing people when he gets there. He comes with bad intentions, and he's one of those guys that I guarantee you, I don't care who it is across the line of scrimmage, they don't want to see him get the football. Because even if you stick him right there in the hole, you're not going to win that outcome. Oh, now you may slow him down, but I promise you it's going to wear down on you all day long. And I could see a dude like that, a big fat bully in the backfield, man, back there, running some sets with, I don't know, Keon Brooks, whoever, Rocco Griffin, whoever the running back is. I think DJ Lundy, I'd love to see that dude in the backfield for Vanderbilt.
It definitely adds another element to the offense.
Let's go to the mailbag, which is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Do you need an insurance agent who wants to know your unique needs and circumstances and will tailor an insurance plan to fit them? Josh is your guy. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com, at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He is my agent. Give him a shot, and I think you will be pleased. Mr. Vandy says, what players would you like to see them sign that haven't already committed or have signed today? I think the answer to that one, Sean Williams, is pretty obvious.
That would be Donovan Kaufman, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking for Kaufman as hard as Vanderbilt's probably tried and maybe, I wouldn't say pressed, but at least said, hey, look, this is the place for you. You've been committed for a long time. It sounds like it's going to go into February. Now, that's not saying that Vanderbilt's totally out of it because of that. I think they're still going to be in it, but it sounds like Kaufman really wants to take at least an official visit to Florida State. Obviously, when if you go through this early signing period, you're a guy like Kaufman, you're a 4-star guy, you're in the Rivals 250. People start looking at your highlight film from your senior year, and he had a monster senior year. Florida, there's probably going to be a lot more teams than Florida State that offers him, so it's going to be a little bit tougher for Vanderbilt to hold on to him. I'm sure they would love him to sign either today, tomorrow, or Friday. But I think the odds of that happening are pretty low right now. But in saying that, if it keeps going, I wouldn't count Vanderbilt out right away. But we'll see what happens, and we'll see what other teams maybe get in the mix for him.
Seabass, you and I talked about Kaufman earlier in the
Yeah,
year. I liked him.
yeah.
I've liked him for a long time. I thought he was underrated, and I feel like his ranking has sort of caught up with that now.
You know who? Now this may sound silly to y'all, but he reminds me when I think about watching him play football and his approach. He reminds me of Steve Smith if he played on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah,
If
I
that
can
makes any
see
sense
that.
to you.
I can.
And God, I mean, look, I can't blame the kid. I get it. I mean, he's really starting to happen now, and if the dude was 6 foot, he'd have been happening, 6'1", he'd have been happening months ago, but I mean, he's and that, look, I mean, it didn't do Vanderbilt a whole lot. One of the best things that would happen to Vanderbilt is if they'd have been eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, but, and congratulations to him for winning the state championship, but not only to go through that and then to be like, I think he ended up being like the difference maker in the state championship game, in a field loaded with talent. And, there was just too much attention on that game. And people were starting to see what we've been talking about. All right, this guy's a player, no doubt about it. I don't care if he's 5'2". That dude, wherever he goes, is going to make a difference on a defense. He's going to play, and he's going to play early because he's not going to let you keep him on the bench. There's just players that just won't because they refuse. They're going to get out there and they're going to win. And I think Donovan Kaufman's one of those guys. And I mean, I don't know what the odds are. I don't know how I even feel about it. I mean, if you ask me right now, do I think he signs with Vanderbilt? Probably not, but you never know. But to me, look, as bad as I know it's a position of improvement, especially next year, that defensive line. As bad as we could have used Jordan Butler, I mean, and I get it, but just how infectious I think Donovan Kaufman could be for our defense, I'd rather have him. I know that sounds crazy, given that's a big fat, whatever. I guess they'd have him maybe a 3 technique, something like that. I don't know exactly what their plans would be for him, but I mean that's how much I think of Donovan Kaufman that I'm gonna hate losing him more than I would Jordan Butler.
This next question is for Seabass. Vandy Dorsned asked you to name, outside of Ken Seals, your 3 favorite recruits in the class.
Okay. Well, one of them to me like I said a minute ago, I think that Logan Kyle is going to be a very good football player, probably much sooner than later in Nashville. But just because I think that, I mean, physically, I think he's ready. Could he get stronger? Sure. Can he get faster? Sure. He's already plenty fast. But he runs outstanding routes. He's got hands of glue. And to hear everything about him, he's just a downright good kid. Logan Kyle is going to be one for me. How often do you find a player, especially for us, that literally athletically checks all the boxes to where I could literally say he could play about 5 or 6 different positions for this football team? How many players fit that bill? DeRicky Wright fits it. He just does. I mean, he's got that type of versatility, and I'm real excited. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Chris. When I first heard they were sniffing that there's a chance, that it was gonna that flip could happen, I was like, come on, as much bad crap has gone on with this class, not this class, but this program lately. There's no way we're flipping DeRicky Wright, and they did. And I think that is absolutely huge. So even though he was late to the party, you have to throw him in there. I just don't think there's any way around that. And number 3, there's a lot to like about this class. I'm gonna go with Bradley Ashmore. I'm going to go with Bradley Ashmore because I think he's another one of those guys. He was one of the anchors in this class, and I think he's got a pretty high upside. I think all the offensive linemen do with experience, but I think Bradley and Ben maybe the 2 more a little bit possibly polished products. But I would say that maybe the highest upside of the 4 linemen in this class is Bradley Ashmore. So I'll go with those 3.
Few more questions. I think these next two are from Vandy Doors Ned. I'm going to start with Sean first and kick this to Seabass. How would you rank Derek Mason's job on this class?
Do I have a scale?
Sure. Give him A, B, C, D, F.
Just grade. I would give him a solid. I mean, honestly, I would probably give him a solid B minus. Just in terms of where we were about this time last week and where they ended up. That really good. I mean, you got Jordan Butler decommitting and flipping to Northwestern. All the smoke around Donovan Kaufman that, looks like it's going to go into February, and a lot of people were low. And then all of a sudden you get, hey, here's to Ricky Wright. I think they're going to flip him. Here's Mike Wright's coming in for an official visit. Vandy's got a good shot there. And, they had a quality, I think a really good, intriguing JUCO prospect quarterback in Musa. And, man, that's a pretty good way to end it, being able to flip those two guys. I think they ended the class really well. I mean, obviously, and hey, look, DJ Lundy's still out there, and that's still a possibility he might sign, this week and the next couple of days. So, if that happens, I mean, I'll bump the grade up to a solid B plus if that happens.
Seabass, your turn.
Well, that's funny because that's basically what I was going to say. B plus if you're able to snag Kaufman and Lundy to end this class to go with both rights. I mean, a week ago, none of those were in play. So to do that, I mean, he's getting in the B range because especially if he gets Lundy, some nice running back depth there. I like both of the running backs. You definitely addressed by far the most important position, and in a pretty big way. At quarterback, you brought in a really nice playmaker at wide receiver, which we didn't mention Shepard, by the way. I know he didn't sign. Just maybe a word from Sean on what they're getting if they end up eventually getting that signature. I thought they did well. 4 solid offensive linemen on the back end. Certainly not bad, especially with Ricky Wright back there. But, if there's an area that they needed to address, it would be that defensive line. Now, I like the way some people are on the border putting that, okay, well, can't we just count Green and Langham as linemen in this class? And I guess, yeah, sure, why not? Of course you can. Neither one of them play for this team yet, so they may not be brand new, but they're brand new to us.
Next one asks what you guys think about the 4 late signees. I think we've talked about all of them but Barr. So, yeah. Sean, let's get your thoughts on that one.
Barr, I know a lot of people on the board we're kind of dogging that one, but, I mean, he is a position of need. He's an inside linebacker type of guy, add some weight on. I mean, he had 107 tackles. He was highly productive, and he had some – I think 3 or 4 kind of group of 5 offers. Was committed to Tulane since the summer. If you want to add a guy that, inside linebacker guy could gain about, maybe 10 or 15 more pounds, it would just kind of be a plugger. I think he'll be a pretty solid pickup. It's late. Look, there's been worse late pickups by Vanderbilt. I think this one's pretty decent and it might pan out.
If I may take a detour for a moment, Sean, was there any stranger recruiting story we covered this year than Devin Curtis?
Yeah, very strange, very strange. I mean, and the thing about it is he was at Vanderbilt like at least twice for games this season. So I mean, they're at least still showing some interest. But I know, like Vanderbilt kind of maybe backed off a little bit earlier in the year. I think they went and watched him play Whitehaven when Brentwood Academy played Whitehaven, and I think Mason and Tarver both went and kind of watched him in person. It was during one of their bye weeks, and they kind of weren't impressed with, I guess, his speed. Just the sideline speed, and they just kind of ended up backing off. And it's funny because not really funny, but I mean, it's just kind of weird because you don't hear a lot of Power 5 teams now just expressing interest in him. You don't see him visiting Power 5 schools, taking officials to those schools like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, so it's really weird how his recruiting process has gone, considering that he became a 4-star, back in the spring and the summer. I mean, he had a really good rivals camp in St. Louis. I was there, showed a lot of great coverage skills. But yeah, it's a really weird recruiting that and obviously people talk about him a lot on our board, but yeah, I mean, it's just one of those, they evaluated him in person. They didn't really like his speed and the sideline speed per se, and they've backed off, and it seems like other Power 5 schools have backed off on him as well.
This last question, unrelated to recruiting, but this is a terrific one. I'm going to give this to you, Seabass. Would Vanderbilt football, and this from Bighorn Sheep, would Vanderbilt football, basketball, and women's basketball all have the current coaching staffs they do today if Darius Garland had stayed healthy and didn't miss games last year?
Man. I mean, that's tough, Chris. Because I look, there's no way that team was going to be that half that bad with him there, and maybe Simi plays harder if that doesn't happen. But golly, Bill, Chris, they were so poorly coached in the last 2 months of that season. I mean, it was just like, it was hard to watch. And, look, I don't know if this is exactly how it played out, but this would be my question. If this is the way that it went down and Malcolm Turner went and watched a practice or two and saw all that he needed to know and let him go, then how bad really was it? What was Darius being there just delaying that? I don't know. That's a phenomenal question, and it's a hard one to answer.
Well, I don't think Turner was going to be allowed to fire Mason regardless. I might be wrong about that. Again, I've said this time and time again. I think that he was looking around. I think there was plenty of evidence in outside channels that they were kicking the tires on other coaches, and not just from me. I've heard that elsewhere too. But I don't know. You could almost argue, but because they're going to have to pay Derek a lot of money to send him packing. And they just spent, I think, 7.1 on Bryce and that staff. I don't know if that affected their ability financially to let Derek go as well. And I think Derek's number was bigger than that. I think Stephanie White probably is the luckiest one in this. I don't think she did anything to deserve another year. Well, I can't say nothing, but she recruited well. I just think her coaching and her approach was so bad that you could have fired her and really not had anything but a leg to stand on if you did so. It is weird to think, I think there's a universe out there somewhere where if Darius does not get hurt, that maybe Bryce is the only one of the three left. It's weird to think about that way, and I don't know that I buy it, but it's interesting.
No, but would the inference be that the only thing that's saving Derek Mason is the fact that they're having to pay Bryce Drew's buyout? I mean,
I don't know that it's just that. I think, again, I kept hearing the chancellor thing, that the not having a chancellor what was an issue among some other things, and the money, that's that type of stuff. I don't know. I don't know if in that situation they were going to get the go ahead to let him go anyway, but I don't think that paying Bryce all that money helped.
Right. Yeah. Well, like you said, Bighorn Sheep. Great question.
Yeah, indeed. That's one of the best we've had this year. That's almost a podcast to itself. But in any case, guys, let's end the podcast tonight. Actually, there's a basketball game coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes. It's crazy to think. But Sean, thank you so much for your recruiting coverage. Tell people where they can follow you on Twitter and what you'll be working on next.
Yeah, it's been another stellar year. You can find me on Twitter at Sean W_Rivals. I think that's my Twitter handle. And yeah, I'll be working on a little bit of just meet the class type profiles, and I'm actually got a timeline too, a recruiting timeline, like pretty much when the class started, pretty much till signing day. Who all committed, who else was involved, stuff like that. Just kind of fun, neat stuff to do. Kind of post signing day. I'll post over the next couple of days. So those are things you guys can look forward to.
Seabass, thank you for joining us. Tell folks where they can find your show, where they can find you on Twitter.
Hey, on the way out there, before I do that, I do want to say, because I didn't get to mention, I too, I wasn't out at the event today, obviously, but from a watching standpoint, these videos and everything, I thought they did really well. I thought it was a lot of fun to follow, and I think it was pretty cool. So I'll give them big ups for that. So you can follow me at Cheap Seats Bash. You can find me at 101.5 FM in Jackson, Tennessee, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8, and online at WNWS.com.
Thanks, gentlemen. For Sean Williams,
yes,
for Seabass, I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We appreciate you listening. Should have a couple more episodes coming later this week, so be sure to watch for those.